All right, we're here. Good evening, everybody. So, hello to Gary, hello to James, hello to everybody out there in
Hello.
YouTube and StreamYard land. This is the generator Q&A that we promised for a couple of weeks. So, hopefully, everyone has questions to get answered. And if you have any questions for James or for Gary or even me, if that matters, we're going to go to the top of the chat. Right now, it looks like someone named Jared Dinkle was the first one with a question at about 1:05 in this afternoon. So I'll read off the question, and Gary, James, whoever wants to chime in, feel free. If I have an answer, I'll chime in, but we'll do that first. We'll go through the chat. We'll see what's in there, because we figure those people who were nice enough to put in the chat, we'll try and answer you guys first. Then we'll go to the live, and you guys can just type in stuff, and we'll go from there. So let's start out with Jared. He says, I have an 8 kilowatt Choremaster generator, a little over a year old. I am trying to get a frame and no one is helping me out. Is there a replacement frame for my generator? That's a loaded question. I'll let you guys answer, but just to say, that's like saying I have a car, I need a frame.
Well, it's not quite that bad, but some manufacturers do sell frames. I've never actually tried to buy one, whether they actually have it and how much it'll cost to ship. Honestly, I would look to find a Honda clone that's blown up and just steal a frame from it, because it's going to be a lot easier to deal with. But I think the issue is that if you get a different frame, then chances are you can't use your control panel. So you're going to have to redo the wiring. You might have to drill some stuff. So it's not an easy thing. But I would start with the manufacturer, but it sounds like they're not responding, in which case...
Well, I guess my question is, why do you need a new frame? What's the issue?
I know.
Yeah, he didn't say what the issue was. Well, I mean, did it get dropped off of a truck? I mean, why do you need a frame? I mean, so Jared, if you're out there, why do you need the frame? I mean, we're really looking for that. All right, let's go on to the next one. Big Man 45. Now, this I think is an engine question. Why won't an old 5 horsepower IC Briggs pulse jet carb spray into the combustion chamber? It's been cleaned, pumps from the tank bowl, but floods carb. Is it a timing issue? Looks like back pressure from the intake on a pulse jet. So the pulse jet, of course, is the one that sucks it from the tank into the little well, then from the well into the engine. And like he said, it's, what does it say? It backfired.
Floods what? Floods the engine?
Pumps from the tank.
It said floods the carb there.
Okay. I mean, those naturally flood, right? And they go back to the tank. I guess I'm a little confused by the question, but if it's not taking fuel, I mean, does it have compression? Is the exhaust breathing?
I've also seen on those, specifically on the 5 horsepower, if your exhaust valve is burnt, okay, it won't allow enough pressure to suck enough into the carburetor. I've seen that before on those 5 horse. Check. I would do a leak down, and I would see if you have any of the valves leaking. Make sure your compression is good, both valves are sealing, because if you don't have enough vacuum coming in to suck it through, it's not going to suck it. And I've seen burnt exhaust valves do that. And the reason I know is you could tell when it was running, you get that glow in the muffler when the exhaust valve is burnt.
It's still burning in the muffler.
Well, but check that out.
It could even be misadjusted valves too. Like if the valves aren't sealed right, you're going to have that problem.
Absolutely. Oh, I just want to say too, thanks for everyone watching. 110 right now in the house. That's a new record for my channel anyway. But anyone who's there, please hit the like. You can subscribe if you want. I know it's my channel, but hit the like at least. That does help the algorithm, and it will help me and this channel, and so we could bring you things like that. All right.
Yeah, and this is not my first time on Ken's channel either. I make appearances here.
James, you want to say hello to Dave just so he can tell his friends you said hello?
Hi, Dave. Welcome.
Behind the camera.
All right, so we got Jim Jones. I'm just going to go through each one going down. Your face is in your second video, Jim? I didn't know that.
Yeah, that was the Onan generator fix.
Oh,
that was like not my first video, but it was my first generator video.
There you go.
Way back when I had no idea what I was doing.
All right. Wondering what is a good oils from Lynn and Dunn? What good oil to use in my snowblower and generator, and what weight? Gary, I talked to you guys a few weeks ago about this when it was really cold out. And I'll give you my opinion first, and you guys can chime in. If it's a snowblower, I do the 530 because if it's really, really cold out, you want a snowblower to be easy to start.
Yeah.
But generator, you guys told me something different.
Well, James, go ahead, because I would say default to the user manual, but there are some manuals that will actually recommend a different weight. It depends on the relative temperature, right? Like a snowblower, you want a 5W30. It's a lighter weight oil for the colder weather. You can't use a 530 in the summer because it's going to be too light. It's going to have a very low viscosity, and it's not going to protect the engine as well. For generators, they usually recommend a multi-weight, which is usually a 10W30, for example. It'll act like a 5W30 below 30 degrees, and it'll act like a straight 30 above 60 degrees, I believe.
Yeah, and it's really based on outside temperature and kind of where your equipment's also going to be stored, because I use 1030 on my snowblower, but I store it in the garage, so it's never going to get really below freezing when it's sitting.
Yep.
And then for like a lawnmower, for example, I use straight weight 30, just because they're used in the summer, they get hot. Even on generators, if it's above 85 degrees, ideally you would switch to like a 30 weight oil. But I do run 1030 because 99% of the time where I live, I'm not going to have issues with 1030 in the generator. If it happens to be a 100-degree day and I'm running it with 1030, is it going to destroy the engine? No, but it's going to consume oil at a faster rate. And if you don't have an oil sensor like one of those storm responders, you could run into trouble. But it's not going to cause a problem. I think if you have oil in there, even 1030 on a hot day you'll be fine.
And remember, if you have one of those oil sensors, especially in a Champion, make sure the generator's level, because it does make a difference.
No, that's the difference. There's an oil level sensor, and then there's an oil pressure sensor.
Yep.
Pressure sensors
Exactly.
seem to be more common on some of the newer Generacs and even the older Generacs. But the level sensors, which are harder to replace, but they're much easier to implement necessarily.
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing is too, it is just a level sensor and it's on one side of the engine. So if you tilt it in such a way that the sensor is perfectly happy, but it may not actually be flinging oil. So
the slinger won't get into it. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, you want to keep them level as much as possible.
With the pressure sensors, usually they're set for 12 psi, and if these engines run low on oil, they froth the oil. Basically, it causes cavitation when they're running low, and it will not necessarily trip that pressure sensor either.
Is it 12 okay or 8? I thought it was 8.
I think it's 12 on my 7000 EXL, but I could be wrong.
All right. So, James, you got to say hello to your friend in Brazil.
Hello, Bruno.
Christopher saying hi from Montana. Hello, Christopher.
Hi, Christopher.
All right, next question we got here. Hi, guys. Here we go for Gary. I have a Furman 3650 watt generator. Just those that don't know, Gary and I are intimate with Furman, him especially. I had one that was so messed up, I couldn't figure it out. I bring it up to Gary's house. First thing he does is take the control panel off, and he's like, holy crap, what the hell was living in here? The wires were just totally destroyed. It was like, I didn't take off the damn panel. I got the engine running great, except it wouldn't run on propane versus gas, and it was the control panel was screwed up. But anyway,
a lot of acorn nuts, and basically the mice ate away all the wiring.
Crazy.
The wiring harness was destroyed.
All right, Chris's question: got a Furman 3650 watt generator, 8-wire AVR. Wondering if I could put a 6-wire AVR on it. Well, you guys can tell me what's the extra 2 wires. What do you guys think? 8-wire versus a 6-wire.
I have an
AVR?
idea, but I don't know for sure. I don't know, Gary, if you have an idea.
I have an idea. Chris, if you could give me your model number. So on some of the Champions and the Furman. So Furman is basically an offshoot of Champion. There's some common C-level people that work in those companies. Champions in California and Furman's over in Arizona. You can get access very easily to an engineer or someone on support email. I've always had good luck with that, and their parts are very reasonably priced. So on some of the Champions I've worked on, so you have 2 wires that are your displaced phase excitation or your exciter windings. You have your 2 output wires for the rotor assembly, for your brush assembly. You'll then have another 2 wires for your sensing winding. Basically, it's feeding back 120 volts or half of the windings back into the regulator to to basically adjust the voltage there as a feedback loop.
That's 6.
That's 6, and then the second two, or I'm sorry, the final 2 that gives you a total of 8 is another sense. It's a 12-volt line, because what's happening is some of the Champions and even some of the Furmans have a remote control. What'll happen is that if you use the remote control, it'll start up the engine automatically wirelessly, but then it's going to have a time delay to activate that AVR. So what it'll do is it'll probably start up, run for about 10, 15 seconds or 30 seconds, whatever the timer's set for, before it will turn on the power head to start making power. And that's meant to allow the engine to warm up and stabilize before it starts generating power. So there's your 8 wires. If you want to put 6 wires on it, I don't see why not.
Well, why doesn't he put the model number in the chat? We're going to get to the whole chat,
I'll look
guys.
at the schematic, but I
Yeah.
think that's what you're dealing with.
Yeah, Chris, put it in the
Yep.
chat. We will get there eventually. I'm going to go down the whole thing. We got a little bit of time here. So
Yeah.
put it in the chat if you guys want to scroll down while we're talking and see if he puts it in. That way, Gary can look up the model, tell you exactly what yours is doing, and give you the best advice.
Yep.
Yeah, and take a look too. I have a couple Champion videos. I was going to say I had 2 Champions I got. I think there were 7,000 watt generators, and those had the 8-wire AVRs.
Yep.
And one of them was shutting down because of an overvoltage, like the AVR was bad. So I actually plugged the 6-wire in to that one, and it worked fine. But obviously I'm bypassing whatever feature that was doing, but that one also didn't come with the remotes.
Yep.
So it was pretty much being used as a normal standard setup.
I'll kick in a video because it's actually on my other small engine channel with my wife and I under S&G Small Engine Repair. One of our first videos that we ever did was a Champion 7,000 watt that had an 8-wire AVR, and this guy basically hooked up his starter battery backwards and blew out all 6 control boards in the machine. So after a lengthy rebuild, but the cost of the parts wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. I think it only wound up being like $200 US to replace all the boards, because the power head was still good and everything else, but had to repair the remote with the new control module and all that stuff. So there was a little bit to do, but I'll find that video and I'll kick that over to you, because it's the same exact setup that we're describing.
All right, McNutty, not to give everything away, we're all from New England area, Connecticut and New York, so we're all fairly close to each other, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm the midpoint. So Ken is about 40 minutes south of me, and then James is about 45 minutes west of me.
Yeah, so all in the New England South area, Connecticut, New York. All right, so Lewis over here. Hello, Haney. That's Michigan and all that. Lewis, no issue. We'll talk to you later on that. All right, we got Texas over here. Everybody loves Texas.
Howdy.
My buddy Pat here in Trumbull with me. Hello, Pat. All right, let's see. Everyone's saying hello. We'll go through that later. Let's see if there's any more questions. All right, here we go. Picked up a new generator today, Pincore Gold Crown with a 7.2 Wisconsin AFH. Ooh, that's an oldie. 1957. Did you get it running, Tom? Because I know I've had Pincores that are PTO driven off the front of garden tractors. I mean, the Pincore was a big aftermarket brand that had a lot of PTO driven generators for like lawn tractors, garden tractors, things like that. But that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that is cool.
Yeah. Here we go, McNutty. What do you want to say? What got Ichi into doing? I'll start with that. The year was 2000. I never had owned a tractor before because my parents, not that they were cheap, but my father would get cheap lawnmowers from a guy in Easton, Connecticut who sold scrap, lawnmowers that he fixed. He was called the lawnmower guy, and he'd been doing it for about 50 years. He owned a gas station on Sport Hill Road in Easton, and it was the perfect traffic past the GE headquarters, and it was like everyone would always drive by his house, and he just had a little sign, lawnmower repair. My father would always get his push lawnmowers there, and I'll never forget my first push lawnmower from him was the kind with the knuckle buster, the Briggs & Stratton, where you roll it up and then hit the button and hopefully it doesn't snap your knuckles. So, but in 2000, a friend of mine was getting rid of an old International Harvester Cub Cadet when they were real tractors, garden tractors. It was a model 107, meaning 10 horsepower hydrostatic. And the dealer around here, Newtown Power, said, well, we'll give you $300 for it. And that was in 1968. And this was in oh, it was the year 2000. So the thing was from 68 to 2032 years old. It was smoking like a chimney. It needed a ring job and stuff like that. They said, we'll give you 300 on a trade-in. Now, interesting story. I won't get into it, but the tractor itself was part of a trailer load of stolen tractors from 1968, 69. A guy had stolen a tractor trailer full of International Harvester Cub Cadets. Okay. He parked it on the end of a street in Monroe, Connecticut, and sold them all out of the back of the trailer in about a 1 hour period in 1969. None of them had the serial tags. He took all the serial tags off the rear ends. So every time I work on an International Harvester Cub Cadet from Monroe, Connecticut, I look for the serial tag. If it doesn't have one, I know it's part of that stash. All right. So funny story. But anyway, that's how I got into it. I bought it from him. I rebuilt the engine. People in my neighborhood were saying, hey, you fix stuff like that? And I'm like, well, I guess I could, because they'd see me out in my driveway working on it, and they started dropping off weed whackers and stuff like that. So that's my story. Since 2000, I've been, the neighborhood guy who fixes stuff, and now Ken Small Engine Repair, YouTube. The rest is history. How about you, Gare?
Basically, since I've been a kid, I was exposed to it very young, at a young age, between my grandfather and my father. But it wasn't really until like 2011, like right before we had Hurricane Irene, that I really started to get into generators. And I'm probably skipping quite a bit because I've always had an affinity for electricity and electronics and whatnot.
Not you.
Seriously, it's been 20. I can honestly say 2011 was when the
Yeah,
necessity.
but let me ask you, seriously, were you the Heathkit kid and the electronics store kid making your crystal radios and stuff like that as a kid?
All
Were you
right,
doing
all
that?
right, I'll admit it. I was the one wanting to hang out at Radio Shack all the time. I made my own AM radio, crystal radio. I did all that stuff. Yeah, I was that nerdy kid. I've always had that mechanical mind where, even here's an embarrassing memory from when I was a kid. I used to play with teapots all the time, and every kid gets some sort of focus where I was wondering how the whistle part worked, right? And I would just sit there for hours at a time, and my parents would always joke around with me. I was like, "You were the best kid." I'm like, "Well, I guess I was just trying to figure things out," but I've always had that curiosity, so it was nurtured at a young age for me, thankfully, and it just became make your mistakes, blow things up, learn from
Was anyone in your family like that? Father, uncles, anything like that?
my father was he was a machine tool and die person, so he never messed with electricity. That was something
Yeah.
he would never touch. Same thing with my grandfather. My uncle, he's a general contractor. Didn't do electricity specifically, but he's aware of it. But where I got really into all the electronics was like, I always hated having to go and, if I wanted to fix something, a lot of times it's beyond repair because someone is not, they just don't know how to repair something at the component level. And over the last 10, 15 years, I probably put in about $2,500 worth of diagnostic tools, of surface mount device tools, everything that you can possibly need for basically a bench workshop of working on electronics. And how often I get those kinds of projects? Not often, but I can fix those kinds of things myself without having to go and send it out to a shop. Sometimes these shops won't even work on small surface mount devices like 0.5 millimeter or even smaller. So, and you just can't really see them as well without a microscope,
Yeah.
unfortunately. And working on those kinds of things. But as long as you have a schematic, I mean, it's trial and error. I mean, if you have, it's a mindset. I've worked with PV electronics for a number of years. I mean, I'm into guitar gear, as you guys see in the back, but it's great to be able to pull up a chair, or you talk to an engineer that's been in the business 30, 40, 45 years, if I'm dating him. Hey John, how are you, if you're watching this video? It's something that you could get a lot of knowledge, and just if you got the way to learn, if you got the passion for it, then that's where it gets nurtured.
One thing that got me with you as being your friend and talking about all this stuff is your decrypting and depotting things. That really intrigued me.
Just the epoxy resin on a lot of the circuit boards that we work on in these generators are put in epoxy resin for a reason. It's not just to keep us out of it, for us tech guys that want to repair them.
Sure,
It's for vibration. It's for secure, to keep them secure, because an engine's vibrating all the time. but some epoxies are very easy to remove, to depot, with the right amount of heat and in the exact amount of in the exact place. Other times you have to actually dissolve them chemically, and at that point you have to say to yourself, how much effort do I want to put into something like this before I just say, the hell with it, I'm going to go and just buy a new one for $100 or 200. It's good to understand how they work, sure, but if someone else has already done the carnage, maybe I can just work around that, and if I only had to fix one part of it. I mean, it happens a lot. I mean, I get a lot of questions even on my channel about, not on my videos necessarily, because I haven't really done a video on an inverter, repairing an inverter unit on a generator, but I get a lot of questions about, well, what's going on with it? It's not working. Chances are it's probably just bad capacitors, but you wouldn't really know, because you'd have to depot the whole thing, and they don't give out the schematics for those inverter units.
What about you, Jim?
Yeah. Well, I guess it's not an easy, straightforward answer, but I guess similar to Gary, I mean, I spent many hours in Radio Shack as a kid, just looking at every single little thing in there, even flipping through the catalog. I used to take apart VCRs. My mom used to actually run her own business, and the place she was at, there were other small businesses there, and one of them threw away a lot of like wiring, switches, relay, control panels. So I would bring this stuff home, put it together, just wire up random buzzers, lights, bells, just trying to, figure stuff out. But I never really got into small engines. I was never really exposed to it. And that was a pretty recent thing for me. I think it was more a combination of things. Part of it was the generator in my RV was acting up. There's no one around really who could work on it, and it would take about 2 hours to reproduce the problem. So even if I found someone who was willing to work on it, I kind of felt like it was a waste of time. It was an intermittent problem. So that kind of got me into this a little bit. Also, my neighbor threw away a generator. So there was one at the end of the street. My son asked if we could bring it home. We brought it home, tried to take it apart, didn't really quite know how to, never mind fix it. And I think the icing on the cake was one year my tractor was acting up, and I brought it somewhere like in the beginning of the season. I think it was probably early May. And this tractor was a Honda tractor, beautiful condition, probably 30 years old, Honda Harmony. And they had it the whole summer. It was outside. I got it back. It was sun faded, stickers peeling, just in terrible condition. And I kind of got sick of, relying on other people for that. So I just started buying stuff and trying to fix it. And there was just a ton of generators around here, especially after Hurricane Irene and Hurricane Sandy. Like after 5 or 10 years, the market was flooded with ones that didn't work. And they were easy for me to take home, as opposed to a tractor where you actually needed a trailer in time. So I just started bringing generators home, kind of combined a few things I'm interested in, and I guess the rest is history.
Now, do you find yourself, I see lately, Jim, in a lot of your videos, you're doing a lot more engine and other things, even dirt bikes and things like that. I mean, what's the future for your channel? Are you still going to do a little bit of everything, or what?
Yeah, I'm trying to do a little bit of variety. I mean, generators, obviously, that's what I'm geared for. That's what I have, the proper tooling to fix. But I don't mind fixing other things. I mean, an engine's an engine. I think once you get outside of your tooling, though, especially with like tractors and things where there's just more parts and maybe more specialty, not really specialty thing, but more tools that I don't have that I might need depending upon, the problem I find. But I do want to do more variety, quads.
Yeah, I enjoyed the dirt bike one. That was kind of cool. So
me too. I love that, and I want to do more of that. I think some of it has to do with space and just the ability to get it home. Like I said, most of the time I go to work during the day. So like if I find something for sale, it's just me on the way home in my car. Can I fit a quad on the back of my car on the way home at 8 o'clock at night? Not really. So it's a little more difficult to get certain things. Although
A little
people
easier
are,
with generators, yeah.
yeah, especially they just keep showing up now. People just keep dropping them off,
Wow.
which is great because I don't have to deal with buying them, selling them, picking them up. A lot of the ones you see behind me, they're all ones that were either sent to me in the mail, someone dropped it off.
People actually mail you generators?
If they're small, yeah,
Okay.
like a
That's
lot of
cool.
the little ones, the
Oh, yeah, the inverters and
EX1000s,
things.
Yeah,
the
the small
suitcase
cells.
type generators. Yeah,
Cool.
people want to send me bigger ones too, but there's just no way to do it
Yeah.
without spending more than the generator's worth, unfortunately.
All right.
So,
All right, another question here. Looking to buy a Champion inverter generator, that model 9,000
I
watt.
already have it looked up. Yep.
Do you feel it's a good purchase? I mean, if you went back 5 years ago, it's a Champion. Oh, it's crap, dollar store. You don't want that. I think it's getting a little better. What do you think?
I agree. That is an open frame inverter generator for tri-fuel. And it also has the carbon monoxide detector on it. Now, the
Is
fact
that
that
good or bad though, Gary? Because I know you and I were talking about the Furman ones in the beginning where they would shut off too often.
well, the being that it's an open frame inverter is being that it's not closed off. There's not
Mhm.
the acoustic panels like you would normally see on like the suitcase generators. So it's probably less likely to be nuisance tripping like that. And that is kind of where the direction of the market is, that you're going to be seeing a lot of newer generator models with the carbon monoxide detector on it. And basically, if it reaches a certain level of parts per million for a certain amount of time, it'll disable the inverter, or if it's an inverter, or it'll just shut down the engine, because it's the carbon monoxide. You can't smell it. It's an odorless gas, but it will asphyxiate you pretty quickly. So that's why they're putting it on there now. But it also increases the complexity.
Let me ask you this too, though. I mean, carbon monoxide detectors have a limited shelf life.
That's correct.
So
Yes.
what happens after they expire?
That depends on, so it's all about how they're stored. So carbon monoxide detectors in your house, we have our smoke detectors, and we have carbon monoxide detectors down in the basement, because it's usually heavier than air. But what happens is that they have a limited lifespan because of the element inside that actually detects the
Yeah.
CO, will and be anywhere from 7 to 10 years.
Yep.
That's about the lifespan that you'll typically see, but it's all dependent on temperature, relative humidity, and it will wear out faster if it's in the hotter temperatures, higher humidity, that kind of thing. So it is a wearable part. It will wear out over time. But the part itself, the sniffer, if you will, the little sensor that's on these machines, they're not that terribly expensive, but it is something where we've been, and I know I've gotten this question quite a lot. How do you bypass it? Well, it's not. It's
Yeah, but
kind of fun.
Gary, excuse me, will they fail open or closed? How will you know?
Usually,
Right. Right.
usually they'll fail. Well, that's kind of a misnomer. They will usually fail where it won't make the engine start.
Okay.
So, because depending on what'll happen is that you have the sniffer, and then you have the control board that it's powered by, and then there'll be a switch via a transistor that will either complete the circuit to ground on the ignition to kill the ignition, and there might be a second transistor circuit that'll actually disable the output to the inverter. I don't know if Champion's doing that, and Furman is doing that on some of their newer ones, but that's where it adds the complexity, because a lot of these machines now are being made to be fail-safe, meaning that you cannot run the machine without that sensor in circuit. So you can't exactly just snip a wire on a lot of them. Some of them you can, but not all of them.
Yeah.
We got 150 something watching, only 84 likes. Hit that like, everybody. It does help.
Yeah, that's
Like everyone said, don't cost you nothing. It helps the channel.
yeah. And I am monitoring. I have a couple questions here on that's coming up on my side of the stream too. And
Yeah,
I
and people just stay with us. I don't know how much time Gary and James have, but we're gonna try and get to every question we can.
Yep,
I'm going to scan through the "Hello, how you doings" really quick. I want to get to the questions. That's the
yep,
purpose of this. So,
sure.
if we don't say hello to you specifically, we do say hello to everybody because we love everybody out there. Okay, here we go. We'll say hello to that guy. All right. Anyway, everyone's saying hello, hello. Let me scroll down. We got like Mark Wiley. He's over in England. It's 2 a.m. and he's
Oh
saying hello.
wow.
So thanks for, and Tom in
Impressive.
Australia. It's now what 11 o'clock in the
In the
9:30,
morning.
so 10:30 in the morning
Yeah.
Australia time. So Tom's here. You got Ontario, Canada. Everyone's saying hello to everybody. Let's see, we got. I'm really behind on the comments. I'm at 9:04 on the comments. It's already 9:30. Let me see. Starting to
Hey, Justin.
cheaper
Fuel
injected, small displacement generator. Like what though? I mean, smaller fuel injected.
Yeah, I mean, some of the snowblowers now, the Ariens have come out with an EFI version. It's port injected, but
I mean, you seen it in generators though? Fuel injected generators?
no, I haven't seen.
Yeah, I've seen it in the snowblowers, but I haven't really seen it in generators.
Not in the generators. I don't think the technology is there just yet because again, it just adds more complexity. And they're selling generators at such a low cost these days relative to what you're getting.
Yeah.
You know, the cost per kilowatt has gone down tremendously. And then forget about the used market. Anything on the used market is if it's not an inverter generator, those big construction site type generators, conventional generators, because of the output, a lot of them are very dirty, high THD that it's not practical for home backup power. It's more meant for a construction site, running a chop saw, running an air compressor, where those things don't really care if you got 20 to 24% THD, something crazy like that.
All right, Justin, just to answer your question, I don't think fuel injection is going to be. I don't think it's going to be revolutionary to our industry. I think what we repair is going to stay for a while, especially two strokes and things like that. So, I mean, to me, if I sort of a fad, I think it's more for EPA satisfaction and things like that. So, but
yeah, I'd be concerned too because I would assume you need battery power to use EFI, right?
Yeah,
like, can you pulse start an engine without a battery? You need the pulse generator, you need the electronics. So I don't see it.
Yeah,
it might be more of a pain.
Andrew, you have it backwards. It's THD, not TDH.
Total harmonic distortion. It stands for.
And the magic number is 5%. If you guys want to explain why.
Jim, you want to go for that one?
Sure. Yeah, I get asked what is THD all the time. It is a measure of harmonic distortion. How's that sound?
Is that how dirty the wave is, basically? How dirty it is?
Yeah, because the sine wave is at 60 hertz or 50 hertz, depending upon where you are. But there's other frequencies buried in there that are harmonics of the primary. So, in the case of 60 hertz, ideally it'd be 100% 60 hertz. But you also have some frequencies in there at 120 hertz, 180 hertz, 240 hertz, and so on. Usually the more powerful, the higher the frequency, usually the less of it there is. So it's usually the first few that are just can be quite strong compared to what it should be. So that it's really just measuring how much of these other frequencies are in there.
Now, above 5%, Jim, what will it do to precision electronic devices?
It's not a hard cutoff. I mean, if it was 6%, you'd probably still be fine too. If it was 10%, you'd probably still be fine. But it's just.
But your old generator video that's at 27%, you really don't want to power a plasma with it,
No.
It's telling you how likely you are that you're going to have a problem. Like most HVAC systems are very sensitive. So, do you want to connect a generator that has 30% THD to your, $20,000 heating system because
with variable velocity motors and all that. Right?
Yeah, those are geared for a very specific voltage and hertz, and they expect clean power. And I've heard plenty of stories of HVAC systems going up. But will your phone charger fry? Probably not. Will your computer fry? Probably not. It's just something to keep in mind. What are you plugging in, and are you okay with?
But what if people say, Jim, that's great. I know my generator's pumping out 10% THD, but I got one of these special boxes that say it'll correct that. Like a uninterruptible power supply and things like that. So there's a big difference between a UPS and a signal conditioner and all that.
Right. I mean, most UPSs are passive and not actually doing anything. And even when they turn on, a lot of them are square wave. So this distortion on that probably isn't.
The old ones are. Not necessarily.
But there's no box that they're going to buy to make the cheap generator with 17%.
They're going to be massive.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're going to be called load and line reactors. Yeah. They're basically very large inductors with the capacitors. They weigh hundreds of pounds because of the frequency.
But economically, it's not worth investing in that. No, you're better off buying an inverter generator.
Right. So total harmonic distortion, it's just like you said, Jim. it's multiple. It's the harmonic frequencies. Usually the third, fifth, and seventh, the odd order harmonics are. And when I say odd, so 60, then double that is 120. Double that, it's 240. Those are even order harmonics. The odd ones, like the 180 hertz, all that one, those other ones that if you were to look at that on a graph, for example, it's voltages at those higher frequencies that the load cannot utilize. So the power has got to go somewhere, and it's usually wasted as heat. It's waste heat. That is one of the main problems with the higher the total harmonic distortion. So a perfect sine wave is going to be, almost 0% THD. The North American, the National Electric Code limits it to about 5% to 6% typically. Anything beyond, say, 8 or 10%, as we discussed, you're going to start seeing problems because, again, the HVAC. I'm actually beta testing for a company that actually designs HVAC boards. I have one of their beta test boards that hasn't even hit the market yet, but I haven't had a chance to properly test it. But they've actually augmented the electronics to where it can handle higher THD from a conventional generator up to 20 some odd percent and not have a problem. And I mean, I don't want to get too far down the rabbit hole with total harmonic distortion. I know James and I will put that in our videos and say, hey, where a THD is, going to be at like 10% or 15% or 3% or 0, because with the Hondas are so clean, you never have to worry about that most of the time. But high total harmonic distortion is not as big of a deal as on generator power as voltage spikes. So like if the voltage spikes very briefly, if your air compressor starts or if your central air system starts, that generator is going to load down, very hard for a split second until the mechanical governor can recover the speed, and then the voltage regulator can go and boost the voltage back up because the voltage is going to drop under heavy load. Well, when it's going to try, that AVR is going to try to overshoot it to try and compensate, and if it lets go too quickly, if you will, try to keep it simple, it's going to spike to a much higher voltage than 120, 240, and that's where things get punched through, and then you have problems with your controller boards. And again, that's the biggest problem with HVAC. Control boards. You can have tens of thousands of dollars invested into your HVAC, and if the control boards are $400 or $500, $1,000, I've run into, all because that it's not properly set up for the level of THD that it can handle safely. I've seen, the motors burn up. I've seen the controller just completely release the magic smoke, all because the generator is not properly, it's not the right tool for the job. So, and inverter generators are the answer, just simply put. But, they are at a higher cost, sure, but they're not as expensive as they once were. They're not.
No, you can get really good deals out there now for inverters. I guess the question is, like that champion question, how long are they going to last? I mean, Harbor Freight sells also like a 9,000 watt inverter, which is very tempting. I mean, that's a fantastic deal.
Yeah,
it's probably half the cost.
The Predator.
The Predator 9500.
Yeah,
just worked on one, and they're actually built very well. The machine had 976 hours on it, running a food truck. I've heard of other guys having 1,500 hours on it or more, but the engine is now starting to smoke a little bit. So it's not necessarily the electrical side that'll have problems. It's usually the engine that's not really. It's built well, but it isn't, built like to the quality of a Honda or a Yamaha, for example.
Yeah. Speaking of the engine, I stumbled across on eBay Honda clone rebuild for GX 390, 420, that size. Comes with a block, a crank, piston, connecting rod, $119.
You talking Chinesium or what?
Of course. Yeah.
Of course.
It just blew me away. I'm like, you get all that for that price?
You can buy a little short block to whatever.
Yeah. Yep.
Interesting.
But to kind of further on that, Gary, too, like I think the bigger issue, like besides THD, is your generator set right? Like the one I was testing last week, that was at 70 hertz.
Yeah.
And
holy cow.
To me, it sounded fine until
it didn't sound like it was screaming
at the end. No, it was just a little engine. You can't tell quite as easily the smaller
short
the
strokes
engine is.
kind of make it hard to tell how fast it's actually going.
Exactly. So, I mean, I've seen like cases where you're pumping in 70 hertz, that's going to cause damage. And I've had generators too where the AVRs go bad and they don't always fail
Mhm.
so that there's no power. They fail at
Oh.
full power. So instead of 120 volts, you're pumping out close to 180 volts
Wow.
on
Yeah.
something that should be
330
120.
volts easily on the
Mhm.
240-volt line. Yeah, because they're working
Right.
with negative feedback. If they don't have that, if that feedback loop breaks, then it's going to go. It has no other way to regulate itself, and it's going to spike high, and that's where things blow up. They've not.
Exactly. So like your HVAC, your fridge, things like that, they're meant for one voltage, one frequency, that's it. So those things are gonna cook.
Mhm. Oh
Whereas
yeah,
I'd say most other things in your house would probably be okay, because a lot of things are actually manufactured to run anywhere in the world, but big appliances, those are meant for your power grid only.
yeah. They
You know?
are. I mean, look at all the smart refrigerators. I mean, to have a Wi-Fi camera looking inside your refrigerator so you can see what you have in your refrigerator while you're at the grocery store.
That's
I mean,
just wrong, though. It's a
You
oh,
can
freaking
plan your
refrigerator.
meal.
You know?
my wife and I, we were laughing about that the other day. I'm like, who needs this kind of stuff? I mean,
Years ago,
I'm
it
the
was
guy
a
that
wooden
got
box with a block of ice in it. You know, come on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But see,
All
this
right.
is why things are getting, getting smarter.
Yeah. Well, no, we're getting stupider. I think. I think it's the other way around, right? Anyway, all right. Next question here from Frank. For you, Jim, I think, because you've done that in a lot of your videos. How do you throw wheels on one that doesn't have wheels?
Well, I would imagine you need. Well, the easy thing is to get the furniture dolly. $20, throw it on, done.
Love it.
Um, but if you want something a little more advanced, it's more than just wheels. You probably need wheels, feet,
Axle.
handles. And the easiest thing I found to give the feet and the handles is like a pipe in the shape of an L. So it gives you the feet, it gives you the handles, although you can't fold them in. And then for the wheels, some people drill it right through the frame. The problem is the frame's usually about an inch in diameter, and most axles are 5/8 of an inch. So you're taking away a lot of material if you do that. So the other alternative would be some sort of bracket system. But, and there are kits out there. Some manufacturers, like I think Duramax might be one of them, or Durostar,
Yep.
they do make kits where you can add that to their generator. And some of those kits will work on other machines. So I would look at kits first to see what's out there.
Depending on the
There are a lot of handles you can buy and different
A lot of aftermarket support for stuff like
accessories.
that.
Yeah, but you just got to look carefully and make sure you find one that's going to work for your machine, because there are slight things that would cause a kit to not work that otherwise might.
Here's a little kudos to Jim from Tractor Therapy, saying thanks for what you do. So that's cool.
Thank you.
And then we got Doug Jones here saying, I guess a key wouldn't break on a generator. I've seen keys break on generators.
Yeah, they can break.
When you pull the cord and it tries to pull you back, I think you got a broken key a lot of times.
Yeah, I've had 3, but actually no, 1, because someone was hammering on it, the flywheel. And then the other 2 were actually ignition problems. It's rare. Actually, no, I had the Subaru too recently that had the key. It wasn't actually broken. I think someone took the flywheel off, put it on the wrong way, and just cranked down on the bolt. Then it wouldn't start.
Here we go. I have an 8 horsepower Briggs and a high weeder, those big weed whacker mowers or whatever. Can it be converted? Anything can be converted to electric start if it was available with an electric start, but then since it's a bear when it's warmed up. What do you mean though it's a bear when it's warmed up? Because you could have other issues.
Yeah, and it would be a little bit pretty expensive to do that, especially if the flywheel doesn't have the ring gear on it.
Yeah.
Then you'd have to replace the flywheel. In addition, it's not just throwing a starter motor on it for like $50 off of Amazon.
Right.
And now you got to put a stator on it and all
Stator
that
on it,
stuff.
yeah.
There's a lot of stuff. But although I've seen people put the electric start with a flywheel ring gear and use a jump box, things like that. So it all depends on what it is. But by you saying it's a bear when it's warmed up, what's the real issue? You know what I'm saying? Do you want to do that because it's a bitch to start when it's hot? You may want to look at other issues.
Yep.
Here we go. Wes, I've seen this channel, West of All Trades. Well, we already talked about THD. We already
Yep.
did that. All right. Hope we answered your questions, Wes. If not, and you joined later, go back. You'll see the discussion that we
And
had.
if there's anything specific about
Yeah.
it, feel free to let us know.
Brandon, hello, Brandon. We all know Brandon. Let's see. Check leak down. Okay, cool. Yeah, with the leak down test to
Mhm.
see if the exhaust valve or something is causing that 5 horsepower not to start the engine. Everyone's saying hello, hello, hello. I know no snowblowers in England, Mark. I know.
Well, we've only had, not a lot of snow.
Tennessee. Here we go. Another question. 8 horsepower side valve on a high speed rotary. No, same thing. Electric start. Yeah. Is it same guy or different guy? Same thing. It's bare to start. If it's a bear to start when it's warm, then you have other issues like it
Yep.
could be vapor lock. It could be they're all different things.
Could be tight exhaust valves too.
Yep. Oh yeah, could be a lot of things. But yeah, I would check. Check different things when it's hot. Make sure that you have no leaks, do leak
Yeah.
downs and things
Yeah.
like that, and compression,
Well,
and see what's
the
wrong.
other thing too is when you shut it down, usually most engines are just killing spark.
Mm.
So when the engine's slowing down, once spark is gone, it's just pumping fuel
Oh, raw
through
fuel.
the
Yeah.
engine
Yep.
without ignition. So
Yeah.
it could just be flooding it
Yeah,
too.
it could be
Yeah.
flooding out the plug, and it just takes a while
Yeah.
to clean it out. We got the
Yeah.
stars are out. Look at this greasy shop rag. Scott, hey Scott.
Yep.
Great channel. Love Scott's channel.
Yeah, and usually when you're shutting down engines like that are killing the spark, if it doesn't have an anti-backfire solenoid up on the bottom of the carburetor to help prevent what James just said, if you have the ability to adjust the speed when you shut it off at a slow speed. Don't shut it off at a high speed because it's
Yeah.
just going to be pulling in that raw fuel and it's not going to go anywhere. And especially if, as I mentioned, if it doesn't have that solenoid, you're going to get a big backfire out of it because that raw gasoline is going to hit the hot muffler, and your muffler is going to make a big bang.
Not that I want to talk about THD again for the 17th time, but what do you use? What's an easy tool for someone to get to look at THD, Jim? Is there a meter out there you can get on Amazonian to check it, or what?
The amp probe that I use is the cheapest meter
And
you
how
can
much is that?
possibly get.
About 350.
There you go, Robert. Spend $300 and call me later.
Yeah, which is why I never got one until
Yeah.
recently, because all the other ones were like
I got mine
1,000,
for a little over
2,000.
200 used. It's the AutoNav NAV-54 AC/DC. You got the 52. It's just 600 volts versus 1,000, but it's still.
Oh,
It's
yours
very
is better.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I'm never going to go and measure that kind of voltage up. I'd be deathly scared of that.
Yeah.
But no, it's the same thing. It's a very good tool, short of actually having an actual oscilloscope and measuring
Right.
with a high 1 to 1,000 attenuator. You can actually
Yeah.
see the waveform.
Yeah. The only thing that scares me in electrical testing, and Jim, you know this personally, because we do it at work, meggers. You can get some serious voltage in your body with a megger tester.
Yeah, well, there's
So
a lot of volts.
Amy's
Yeah, I bet
asking,
there
how do you
is.
free up a spark? Amy, I have that condition right now with a tractor that's in my driveway, where the aluminum head and the steel threads have sort of welded themselves together. And the only thing I can say is, I mean, I've used heat, I've used the wax trick, I've used acetone and tranny fluid and all that stuff. The best way, if you don't want to totally gall it up, you may just have to take the head off. We have, meaning some of us small engine guys have what we call back tappers, so we can actually take the spark plug out, and if some of the threads strip, you can go in with a collapsible, what they call back tapper, and it'll tap from the inside out, so you don't have to take the head off. So, but a lot of times, you start going in reverse trying to take a plug out, and it's hard as hell. A lot of times you're just going to gall those threads, and you may have to
Yeah.
helicoil it. You may just have to
Le-
helicoil. Yeah.
Leave it. Does the plug still work?
Yeah, if it still
It's
fires,
really-
who cares?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've actually had a guy. He says, "I'd rather spend $4 on the head gasket. I'll take the head off, wire off the spark plug, and put it back in."
Right.
For the head gasket
Good
is
idea,
the
actually.
spark plug.
I mean, most plugs and stuff like that can last a very long time if
Yeah,
you're lucky.
100%, yeah.
All right, I'm going to scroll through his comments here. Hold on, there's another question for you, James or Gary. When you use
That's James.
with the integral regulator, well, you can answer that because that's.
Was the pilot circuit blocked off?
LP though, I figured Gary would be more into that one.
Yeah.
No,
So
that's actually because I had that generator and I went and I put and I gave it to James because I figured I can't use it. But he found it. He got lucky with that $40 truck dual fuel conversion there. But
yeah.
he's asked. Let me read.
Was the pilot circuit blocked off? So to answer the question, the only thing I blocked off was the fuel inlet for the gasoline. I
Mhm.
put a vacuum plug on it because that would cause an issue because anything that comes out of the emulsion tube,
Yep.
I think would be considered a vacuum leak.
Correct.
So
Yep.
you
Makes it
have to
run
plug
clean.
that off. But as far as the pilot circuit goes, that's a good point because I didn't block the pilot circuit off, and there is an air jet on the front of the carb that goes down the side and then comes out where it's supposed to be air and fuel. So to answer that question, no, I did not plug
You
that.
shouldn't have to though because it's such a small volume of air. It's meant to meter the amount of liquid gasoline going
I mean,
through.
it's not going to cause surging and all
It's
that,
not
right?
going to cause surging, and if
Yeah.
anything,
No,
the
but it is a vacuum leak technically. But I would
Technically, it is.
assume they've accounted for that because it's a
Small.
tri-fuel carb.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
it's small. I
supposed
mean,
to.
you would probably make the compensation for it with. I know there's no instructions that came with that, right?
Yeah.
But
No.
reading one of your comments on that channel on that video, James, and someone did
Yeah.
say yes, it does have a load block. You can set it here,
Yeah.
so you can adjust them.
Jim, was that the
I'll
video
have to go.
where you're like, "Oh crap, there's an extra tube on this. It's a tri-fuel." Was that in one of your
Yeah,
videos?
there was I think a knob or something. Like originally I wasn't sure what that was,
Yeah.
or whatever, but because there are no instructions. The weird thing is, right after I published that video, HIPAA reached out to me. Like they didn't send that to me. They didn't sponsor it. They wanted to use the video in promotion of that product.
That's all right.
So I wasn't able.
$2,000, no big deal.
Yeah,
You
but
know?
I did make some recommendations on how to improve their product. So I don't know if they're going to listen to anything I said. But it'll be interesting to see if they do change it. I think the biggest complaint I had about it was that it just sent the propane line straight out rather than down, kind of like the OEM Generac did and a lot of others do as well.
Yeah.
All right, we got our favorite word, Nikki. What are your thoughts about adapting a vintage 8-horse Briggs flathead generator to use a newer style carburetor in place of the medium? Why would you want to do that? That's a great carburetor. I like the flow jets on those old 8 horsepowers. You know, the ones that go up, the upjet, the updraft.
Yeah, I like them too.
Yeah, what would be the advantage of a Nikki or a Walbro? I mean, the Briggs Flowjet is a phenomenal carburetor. It really is.
Yeah, I mean the difficult thing. I mean the jetting you could probably adapt it easy enough and get the jetting. But the real problem is going to be the governor linkage.
Yeah, I'm wondering what his issue is with it. I mean, why would you want to change it if it's proven and it works? Unless he's missing it. They say it's not there. I mean, who knows? But maybe he'll chime in later to see what the actual problem is.
Hey, question for you, James. It's on my side of the
Okay.
screen here. Kyle Roth. This is back from 9:30, so I'm a little behind. Jim, what is the largest generator that you've repaired?
Well, the largest one I've repaired is probably about a 20 horse V twin, and there's actually one right there. So that's about the largest I've done. I have worked on generators larger. I think I worked on a 4-cylinder Generac with a friend, Rob, who also runs a small engine business. But it was more just kind of troubleshooting it. He actually got COVID right after that, so he finished the repair without me. But yeah, mostly 2 cylinders. The largest I get to about 20 horsepower.
Yep. One more question from Bent Wing Brewer. Anyone have a link to carburetor jetting sizes? Been struggling with surging Makunis.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, but
Who
McCuney,
doesn't?
yeah, but a McCuney on what though? Because if you go to like 2 Vintage, the kid who does all the dirt bikes and ATVs, you could buy a McCuney jet kit for about $100 that has like 150
For a
jets
dirt
in it.
bike, yeah.
But
But can
saying
you?
it's different
Yeah.
from small engines to motorcycles to ATVs.
Yeah.
So depends on what you're looking at. When we talk about our Makunis, like Kawasaki's and things like that use them, it's a totally different thing from, say, an ATV or a motorcycle. So I don't think there's a generic kit for small engines like we do, although there are some
For
channels that,
Hondas.
yeah, there are some channels that do hop-ups for small engines for like mini
Yeah.
bikes, go-karts. They offer
Yeah.
kits and things like that.
They do, like a lot of the 212cc family of engine, which is a Honda clone. So anything from like a GX 200
Mm.
and the 212cc clones are kind of thereabouts. They're used a lot on go-karts, and you can buy kits with different size jets for them, for sure. But yeah, once you start talking about just regular like Mikuni
Yep.
carbs that you'd see on a on a Briggs or a Subaru, you're not going to find jet kits for that.
Yeah.
No one's putting them on go-karts. No one's putting them on dirt bikes. They're fixed jet, and that's it. So unless you're going to drill it out, you're not going to really be able to find anything
Yeah. And
different other than what's
depending
in
on the
there.
issue too, I mean, a lot of times we always show in our videos, if it's doing a little hunting and surging, won't idle, it's usually the pilot jet in most cases, you know. And I know,
Yep.
Jim, you've had success with some of the drilling and stuff, and we've had things where we've broken off thumb drills and things like that. So be careful when you're doing pilot jets, especially the one-piece brass pilot jets, because if you break the drill in one of those, it ain't getting fixed. The ones that are plastic, you can pop out that little bushing, get the drill bit out, and put it back in. Those are no big deal. But like the Tecumseh ones that go in one piece, no, that
Yeah.
drill breaks in
Yeah.
there, you're done. So
I did that once on a Ryobi.
We all have.
It was all brass. Broke it off in the pilot. Went to the Ryobi website and realized you can't buy the jet. You have to buy the whole
About the
car.
whole thing.
I found
Yeah,
one 2
so-
weeks ago in a Chonda carburetor that actually fit the Tecumseh and worked. I was like, wow.
Nice.
So, but here you go, Gary, something about fuel injection.
Arturo. To bring everyone up to speed, Arturo he was converting one of his generators, and that it was already dual fuel capable, but he wanted to use natural gas. But the fuel kit that was native to the Duramax generator couldn't handle it, so I didn't realize it. So apparently, it was a known issue. You had to drill a hole through the adapter to. Okay, so Arturo, you were able to fix the native conversion kit that was already on the machine, not use the Nashville kit, which I have a big problem with those guys. I don't think that their kits are as well built as other companies, but because of what we've discussed. But yeah, that's great. Great to hear.
Anyone who's just chiming in now, we've been on for close to an hour. We've talked about a lot of things over the past hour. So if there's questions that you have, and maybe we will not get to your exact question, go back and look at it, because we have talked a lot about total harmonic distortion, general problems, how we got started, things like that. So don't hesitate to go back, whenever you have a chance in the next few days, and see what we've talked about for the last hour. Because if you're just joining us, you may have missed something that you want us to answer, but we've already answered it. So just go back. All right, Wes is saying hello to everybody. Here's a general question for you guys. Can I run a generator in my house that has 100 amp service? Well, that's a loaded question.
Very loaded. Depends on what you want to do. As long as you're using a proper interlock or a transfer switch to switch from your utility to the generator, yeah, then however big of a generator you want to run.
Well, let me be John Q. Public and ask you a question. I just bought a 5,500 watt Generac, and I'm really just interested. I want to heat my house. I want to keep my food cold. And I want to have lights in my computer. Would it be enough to do that?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Because a lot of people ask me, "Oh, I need a 10,000 watt because I got this, this, and this."
No.
What do you really need
You-
when the power goes out? And most people say, "I want to put my whole 200 amp service panel." And I'm like, no, you want to be able to survive with no power. And there's a big difference between the 20 kilowatt generator that goes on automatically for $20,000 and a 5,500 watt Home Depot, just so your food doesn't go bad and you have heat and hot water.
Well, if
You
that's
can, you can do a lot though.
If it's electric hot water, heat and hot water,
yeah.
and you're out for a time, now you have to consider that. Like I have an electric 55-gallon electric hot water heater that's 5,500 watts alone, and then the furnace is forced hot air fuel oil, so that's on a regular 15 amps branch, 120 volt circuit. So a 5,500 watt generator would work for the furnace, okay. But if I needed hot water, I don't like running those portable generators in general all the way to at 100%, because that is a constant load, and you need a much more beefier generator to run bigger loads like that. So you'd have to go and plan it out. You'd have to plan it out.
Disconnect the heating element.
General question: always run my small engine out of gas at the end of the season. The Briggs guy said it was a bad practice, leads to rust. I don't know. Well, it depends. I've been using the alkylate fuel lately. I bought 3 gallons of alkylate fuel on eBay, and in my Harley, I put in 2 quarts of that now, and come springtime, it starts right up. And if I have chainsaws that I probably got 25, 30 chainsaws, they all have alkylate 2-stroke mix in them, and every one 2-3 years later starts fine. So
Yep.
I don't see a problem draining it, but keep in mind, guys, when we say drain it, don't just take out the bottom screw. I'm sorry, don't just take off the drain that's at a 45-degree angle that leaves a 1/4 inch of fuel in your bowl and that turned to gunk. You know what I mean? 'Cause some people realize when we say drain, take the bowl off, drain it, make sure there's nothing there.
And another good tip for that too, the 45-degree angle, is good. But if you want to avoid having the pump gas go bad on you, use the alkylate fuels. I know some people will say that don't use the canned fuel that you can get at the hardware store. It's not as good. If we're talking about 4-cycle, like True Fuel, 4-cycle or VP fuel that doesn't have the ethanol in it to turn all that old fuel into gunk, then I would say go ahead and use that, because the worst that's going to happen to that stuff is that it's not going to leave a nasty residue in your.
It may go stale, but
It may
it's
go
not
stale,
going
but
to
it's
turn
not
to jelly.
right. You're not going to turn to jelly. And to answer his question about rust, when you shut it off, like it's like for a snowblower or even a generator, once it shuts down and you have it and it's dry, pull the cord a little bit, and once you get the piston up to its compression stroke, both valves are closed. So that means that one valve's not open, or both valves are not open at the same time. You're not letting the environment externally, like if you leave it in your basement or you leave it in your shed and it gets high humidity, well, it's going to travel up the carburetor or travel up the muffler and get into the combustion chamber where the metal gets cold, and then the metal is going to stay colder longer. So the water vapor is going to condense. If you close it off, then it's less likely to happen, and then you can use fogging oil or put 2 tablespoons or a teaspoon of oil down the spark plug hole, pull the cord a couple times, and then store it, on the compression stroke. You keep that combustion chamber as sealed as you can.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
The oil will prevent it from surface rust from developing. I do that all the time with my snowblower.
Yeah, I had the snowblower in my mother's basement. It's a dry basement. Don't get me wrong. It's got dehumidifiers, all that stuff. And I'm telling you, the carb, even though I drained everything, it was rusty as hell. I'm like, what the heck? And I'll be honest, a lot of these Chinesium carburetors, like even on the newer Aarons, I don't know what metal they're made of and what the plating is, but oh my God, they just rust like crazy.
Yeah, it's just the bad alloy. It's very cheap. It's basically aluminum slag.
Oh, you guys can answer this one because I don't know much about these big generators.
Oh, the Predator. Okay, that's the big one.
A magnetic dipstick?
Oh, he's asking about if the thread is. Are you saying that is the thread size and the thread pitch the same thing, the same size on all the 458cc clones?
I would doubt it.
What do you mean by magnetic dipstick?
I don't think so. I mean, it stands to reason, maybe, but I can't imagine.
You can get aftermarket. Yeah, you can get aftermarket ones to screw in. They're pretty popular on, especially like the inverter generators. I see those a lot advertised.
Yeah, because some of them even extend the neck out, because if you don't have a vacuum extractor like us small engine guys, the only way you can change the oil on an inverter or suitcase generator, you have to flip it over. You have to tip it over. And they do usually mold into the side so the oil can drain off there, so it doesn't go inside the inverter generator. But the magnetic dipstick will extend out the neck a little bit, so it won't do that.
Okay, Jim, you had a video on this just the other day where you had to adapt an air cleaner, right?
Yeah, I had to make an air cleaner.
I guess whatever will work, Mike, that seals to the carburetor and is not hitting the side of the frame.
Is it the whole thing? Is it the actual cover, or is it the housing or the cover? Because if check on Jack's Small Engines, I know that they usually can get those for the EXL specifically.
Yeah, they're pricey though. I got one like 2 years ago. I ordered one for about $50.
Is the
Just a
EXL
little cover.
one that we hate, where you got to take all the covers off to get to anything?
No, that's not. That's a. You're
No, it's probably the XG.
XG.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah, the XG is the later
Series.
version. The EXLs came out in the early 2000s, and they have a spin-on oil filter. That's probably the 7000 has the GN 410, and then I think the 4000 has the GN 2 something. I can't think of the number.
I think we all have Chinesium ultrasonic cleaners. I think they're all made in the same factory now, just all the different names on them.
Yeah.
This works fine.
Pretty. Everyone I've seen online lately looks identical. It's
Yep.
just one says Vivor and one says Chongfeng and the other one says something else. You know?
Yeah.
But I think they were all made in the same factory. But
Yeah, I
now
mean-
the prices are so low. I think I paid $350 for my 9-liter. I think it's about $90 if you get it on sale now.
Ooh, that's expensive. I got my 15.
But I got mine 5 years ago.
Oh, I mean, but I still have mine. Probably about the same time I got.
Yeah.
You got yours. The 15-liter was about just under 300.
Wow. Yeah,
So-
I just for some reason I was just dying to get one. 9 seemed to be a decent quantity. Now I'm saying I should have got like a 12 or 15-liter.
The 15 is great, but it's hard. It takes a long if you
To
have
heat up. Yeah.
Heat up, yeah. So you just take the
The
1500 watt
immersion
immersion heater.
Bruce, yeah, Brucey has a immersion heater. All right, everybody loves James. We all love James. And then we got Mississauga. I know Mississauga. That's where SAP is located up there. Mississauga. Boston is here. Everyone's saying hello, hello, hello. Brazil, hello, Brazil. I am so far behind on the. Oh, here we go. Another question. Dave York. Oh, hold on. Come on, guy. There we go.
Okay, good. It is coming up on the main channel here. Good, because I saw that on my channel.
EXL 8000, all windings ohm out, correct, and meg out. It has no voltage output. Unless the poles are separated at the gen, then I have 120 per pole. Oh, there you go.
I know this. I know the answer to this one. So I had asked him on my other chat here. Basically, so this is a common mistake that I found with the EXL. So there's a duplex outlet on there, and if the outlet is replaced, there's a tab that links both the top and the bottom duplex outlet.
Oh.
So there's a tab on the neutral, which it needs to stay intact, but on the hot side, you have to break that tab because it's basically shorting the two legs together. And if it's shorted together, you have no residual magnetism to actually start to excite the generator, so nothing builds up. And sometimes if you have a very strong residual magnetism, it'll actually go to a dead short, and ideally your circuit breakers would trip. But check that tab. If that tab is still intact, and also let us know the model number, because I would be willing to bet that's where your problem is.
Cool. All right, let's see. California, Brazil again.
Brazil.
Everyone's saying hello, hello, hello. I am way behind in the chat. Let's see. Jim, what's a running Sears 2-stroke 5 to a collector?
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if there's a big demand out there. So I had a Sears 2-stroke, I think 500 watts. I didn't sell it for much. It's probably like $100, if that.
Yeah, I see them for $50 at the tag sales and things like that.
Yeah.
Market for those things have gone out and gone down the tube.
Yeah. The vintage Hondas have some value, but that's about it.
Yeah. More work on inverter. Well, the thing is, Nick, inverters don't break like the other ones do.
They do break.
Well, they do. There's more to break.
Yeah, there's more to break. And then how many shops do you actually find that are actually willing to, because they're not going to be able to repair at the component.
Yeah, but let me ask you, you have a $2,000 inverter generator. Is it worth spending $1,500 to fix it? With the board,
it's not going to cost that much.
No, but I'm saying a lot of these boards are expensive, right? These control boards and things.
Yamaha, yeah, but the champions and the firm ones, no, they're not as terrible.
Okay.
Like the 9500 Predator generator, that is like little over $400 US to replace that entire inverter unit. So it's not terrible for a $2,500 machine.
Even the Honda, I have a Honda EU 6500. I think to replace that inverter module, it's not too bad.
Yeah.
I want to say it's like $600 or $700.
It's expensive. Just it's mad.
It is, but the generator's $5,000, so it's a fraction of the price of the machine.
Yep. There's meat on the bone, money to be made.
Here's one for me. Cub Cadet Early 90s, the Magnum 18s, which are great engines, servicing the combustion chamber and valve. I'll be honest, Mark, if it's running good, I've serviced them a ton of times. Get a piece of glass or a piece of granite tile or something. Check the head with a 1,000th or 2,000 feeler gauge. If it's pretty good with 1,000th or 2 or 3, you're fine. If 5 or 10,000 feeler gauge goes in, take a piece of emery cloth on the glass or on the tile and give it a little bit of rub. You don't have to go crazy with it, and I'll be honest, depending on the hours and how it runs, I've seen these engines. I have one from 1965, a Kohler K series, and I haven't taken the head off ever. It's 1965. I mean, it runs good, so I'm not going to bother with it as long as it runs good and the spark plugs are good and you don't think there's a lot of carbon. Remember, now you've got a lot of these cameras that are $25 that you attach to your phone. You can go in there with the camera and see, do you have a ton of carbon buildup in there? If you don't, leave it alone. Don't waste your time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So let's see what else we got. Here we go. Question about a tool pole 30 amp breaker. My Champion had one go bad, and the replacement says 13.5 trip amps, and the original said 37 trip amps.
Whoa.
Doesn't sound right.
No, that doesn't sound right. What's the model number? And I know that you can look up that part number if you're trying to find an aftermarket. I wouldn't recommend it. I know you can get those, something like that, a generic part like that you can definitely get access to. So if you have the model number, I can look up the part number for you. It's not.
And like we said, anyone that's in the chat now, I don't know how much time you guys got, but when we end this thing, if we haven't answered your question, put it in the comment. If we ask a question of you and we haven't gotten back to you, put it in the comment. We'll spend the next few days going over it, the three of us, and hopefully get everything answered in the comments.
Yep. And we have our emails as well if you have any specific direct questions there too.
There we go. Let's see. Mark is still there. Dave.
Before.
Yeah, here we go. Someone's saying with the glass and the marble. Yep. Let me see. I'm so far behind in these things. Hold on.
You're good. You're good.
You got any questions on your channels, guys, that you want to address?
No, actually, it's actually. I think I'm the only one that's linked to it. It's. I am seeing the ones that are linked coming in here, so we're not missing them. So.
When I see the inside of a crankcase in James's videos, I often see a spike on the bottom end of the connecting rod. Ooh, that's interesting.
Okay.
Yeah. Go ahead, guys. You can answer.
No, Ken, you can do that. Do that.
Well, engines that don't have oil pumps rely on what's called splash lubrication. And that little thing on the bottom can be either cast into the bottom of the rod, like on an aluminum rod, or could be a bolt-on metal piece, like on a Briggs. And that's called the finger or slinger, or, the oil finger. What happens is that passes through your oil pan and your oil, it travels up that flinger to a hole in the bottom of the connecting rod onto the crank pin to lubricate. Okay, it's called an oil slinger, and that's why when you have splash lubricated engines, 2 points, you don't idle them like a Harley. Potato. No, they need to be run at a specified minimum RPM, usually around 1,000 or 1,200, so that slinger operates efficiently and gives the oil where it needs to go. Also, in the manuals, especially Kohler K series or anything with splash lube, they'll recommend in it, you'll see a picture of a lawn and a tractor at an angle. And it'll say, do not run this tractor or piece of equipment more than, say, a 15-degree angle. Because what happens is your oil level is, say, here. When you run at a 15-degree angle, that flinger may not hit it. Okay. And if it doesn't hit it, no oil, no engine. Okay. And I've had people call me up. Hey, I went to go get my mail in my John Deere 212 with the Kohler K301, and it just died. And now it won't start. Well, it won't start because you have a driver that's at a 47-degree angle. You left it idle when you went to go get your mail, and it died. So look at the manuals. If you don't see an oil filter on your engine, okay, but there's a fallacy too. Pressurized lube does not mean full pressurization, okay? Pressurized lube can mean it has a pump that filters your oil, but it still relies on flingers to get it there. So there's a fallacy when you see pressurized lubrication. If it says full pressure lubrication, I always tell people, if you have a lawn like this, where you're going up and down, get something with a filter with full pressure lubrication, preferably a Kawasaki or something that's got a good oil pump system. But older engines, the oil slingers or fingers or whatever, Don't run them on extreme angles, at least not for a long period of time. With today's synthetic oils, yeah, can you run it for 10 seconds? Yeah, it's not going to hurt anything. But if you have a hill like this and it's an oil flinger engine, yeah, not a good idea. All right, let's see. Oh, here we go. Yeah, it's a nice Greek name, Kelapalides. Are there any engines you will not work on? If so, why? There's only one engine I don't like to work on. It's a Onin twin that's in a lot of older tractors. The ignition system and the parts are very expensive, and there's like a reluctor ring and some other stuff, and if you break it it's $80, and the coils are expensive, and I just don't like working on some of the older engines. Once Cummins bought out Onin, the prices are ridiculous. It's the only engine I really don't like because of availability and sometimes just the scarcity of getting parts. That's all. What about you guys?
I'm probably going to make some enemies of some small engine guys, but I won't work on the Kohler Courage.
Oh God,
that to me is the worst engine ever built. And then before people start throwing pitchforks at me, I look at it and I go back to the customer, because it's hard to explain to a customer they got a piece of crap engine. And I tell them,
I don't think anyone's going to throw pitchforks at you. But yeah, that engine is not the best design.
No, but see, the thing is, if you have a small engine shop, this is why I'm expecting that people I'm going to get crap for, because those kinds of engines, they make money on it, because you fix it nice, because you fix it twice or sometimes 10 times of the same problem, right? To me, I just don't see I don't need the extra money to have to work on those things, because
it's still my most popular video is my Kohler Courage tips and tricks.
Right. I still expect that at some point I'm going to fix it and it's going to break, not because I didn't fix it the right way, but because it's just a crap engine. And the customer is going to say, well, you just worked on it, I fix it again.
But in all honesty, if you get if you Loctite the cover bolts and do the requisite fixes, I know people that have had them 10 years, and it's just, I know people also, I hear like a ding 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 ding, yeah, the bullet heads are getting sheared by the flywheel, things like that. So
I know. Like I said, I'm sorry, not sorry.
Gary, how about this one? Do you know the horsepower of this, or can you find out?
W-Gen, yeah, give me a sec. I know where there's someone in the Facebook groups was asking about that the other day. I wonder if it's the same person. Hold on, what is it? The W-Gen?
Yeah, I'll leave it up. James, someone's asking, why don't you have more live videos? James is a busy guy. He's got a very busy guy.
It's the only time I can do it is right now, and to be honest, the only time I can fix stuff too is right now. So if I'm doing live streams, I'm not going to have a weekly video. So
we planned this 2 weeks in advance, guys. I mean, we've been talking about this for a month or two, and finally, when we all agreed on a day and time, that was literally 2 weeks ago. So we've been planning this. It's not something where I just call the guys up, hey, let's go on. That doesn't happen. So. And honestly, guys, when you're doing this, you got to set up with StreamYard. It's not 5 minutes, and then you have to make sure we're all here and our equipment's working properly and all that. Someone's got to man the controls. I mean, it's a little bit of work.
Well, that's a good point too. Like, I haven't done a live stream in a while. I had to find everything. My microphone, my camera, does my wired Ethernet still work in the garage? It takes a bit of work.
It does. Yeah, we enjoy it. Like I said, those that don't know, I do a live stream every Saturday, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's a small engine live stream. Sometimes Gary will come on. Sometimes James will come on, depending. We have a cast of characters all over the world, from Australia to Denmark to England to Canada, all over the place. Great cast of characters. We always answer small engine questions. Sometimes it gets into questions about anything, and we have a lot of good fun. It's 2 hours. It goes from 2 to 4 p.m. every Saturday. Check it out. Look at my channel on Saturday afternoon.
The 500cc engine too, it's probably going to be around 16 horse, maybe 16 and a half horsepower.
Maybe a little bit more than that, because I know the 410cc's are about 14 horsepower, so 500, you're right. I think 15, 16, that's right. I'm in the instruction manual now for that Westinghouse 11.5.
But my question is, why does he want to know? What's the question? Why does that matter?
I mean, it doesn't, because they're not going to rate it in horsepower anymore, just because it's the testing parameters that they do.
All the lawsuits that took place.
Exactly. So now they're going to rate it in CC. So what is the CCs? And it's,
when they got sued, it went from horsepower to torque. Now it's going from that to CCs.
Right, because when you're talking about displacement, but I just don't see it in here. I'm surprised they wouldn't put it in there. I guess they really are gun shy.
But you know what you type in just for the hell of it? Type in CC equals what horsepower. There's an actual chart, and it's pretty close in a lot of cases.
It is. I mean, usually 30 cc's
per horsepower
is what I go by. 30 cc's is about a horsepower, at least in the GX390. So if you have a GX390 versus a 420 cc, it'll be a horsepower more. Or the
212 is a 6.5, right? The 212. So if you double that, that's 424.
Well, you got to figure if they've done it, if they've sized it correctly. So is it truly, what is this? How many running watts is this? This is gasoline peak watts. That's peak watts is 14,500, but I care about the running watts. So 11.5K. So if that's true,
there's no way.
There's no way that's going to do that, because you have to figure that it's 2 horsepower for every 1,000 watts under load, and that's because of inefficiency of a single cylinder engine. At most, if you're going to do
about 9,000 watts, I'd say.
I thought it was 746 watts per horsepower.
Yeah, that's definitely not going to do it. So divided by.
Nick is asking about the oil pump. We just talked about that, Nick. If it's a non-oil pump engine, it's got an oil slinger on the connecting rod that flings it. And like I tell most people, check the oil every time you use a small engine. It's cheap insurance. All right, let's see. And those, I'm looking at all the comments. If I don't say hello to you, I am not ignoring you. We already talked about backgrounds, Dave B. Go back in the chat. You'll see that. Our friend Tom in Australia. I don't know if he's still up because it's only 11:20 in Australia. He was asking me today. He's got a customer that's good. And I asked you guys earlier today privately. Yeah. He's got one of those Chinesium 3,500 watt. It's branded, Wang Feng and everything else. And he's getting it in. He wants to know if there was a manual. Tom, I looked all day for a manual for that, and no, I couldn't find anything, especially for a 3,500 watt inverter or 3,600 inverter.
So Not to get too far off topic, just we're that 11.5K. If they truly did size it 2 horsepower to every 1,000 watts, you're looking at about a 23 horsepower motor. Ideally, that's a V-twin. That's a V-twin for sure.
Yeah.
Let's see, Tom. It's an invert. I'm assuming 3,600 watt. But if it's a small inverter, 3,600 watt Chinesium like that, is there a generic Predator or Champion or something that's the same size? Is there a 3,600 watt small inverter available, guys, from other people that Tom can maybe look at to check out some wiring or something?
There are. I guess the thing is, it's hard to say because it's all covered. It's an enclosed machine. So if you send some pictures of the engine, we might be able to identify what it's a clone of.
He doesn't have it yet, but I've seen the pictures online. They're all the same. If you type in that XG SF3600, there's 50 different brands of that exact same generator. And it's a fully enclosed camper type thing that's about the size of a small suitcase,
at that wattage, it's probably a clone of a Honda GX200 in there. It's probably a 212cc engine.
Propane generator repair video. Gary, that's for you.
Actually, it's for both of us because we've worked on. If we're talking, the dedicated propane generators, the ones that failed in the market, they were kind of the precursor to what we have today with the tri-fuels and dual fuels. James has worked on the LP3250 Generac, and I've worked on the LP5500. He also took that same dedicated propane generator and made it to where it's actually in sellable condition as a dedicated propane generator. But some of the dual fuels and tri-fuels, I haven't come across too many of them around here. One, because it's just where we live anyway. I live within 1,000 feet of a substation, so it would take like a Category 2 hurricane to even make the lights flicker for me. Depending on where you live, a squirrel as much as farts, and you lose power for 8 days. Who knows? But I haven't seen too many come across. But I love to just be able to,
Yeah.
to just take one apart and take a look at it. And usually the biggest problem is that the regulator is, clogged up or it's not set properly.
I like Amy's comment. I miss Radio Shack. I really do. I used to go in there all the time.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
missed it too.
The last one in the country was in Pennsylvania, and it had an official like party when they had their last day, and there was literally a mob outside waiting to get in the place. Yeah, it was the last Radio Shack in the country.
Wow. Yeah.
Let's see what else we got. We're getting down toward the end.
Yeah, we're almost caught up.
Yeah. We said that before, Robert. What's that one again, James, for TA? What's the cheap one? $300?
Yeah, the amp probe. I have the
Amp
ACDC 52 nav.
Yep. Or the 54 nav that's capable of THD.
There you go, Robert.
54.
Let's see. Hey, Hester's here. Hello, Hester. What else we got? Here we go. Natural gas.
Well, that's a...
Gary, you want to explain the difference between propane and natural gas?
Well, other than the BTUs, there's a lot of variables, especially if you want to convert it. Is it just a straight on gasoline generator and then you want to convert it to natural gas? Sure. You are going to lose some overall wattage because not only less BTUs, but it's just the lack of efficiency. It's tuned for gasoline. Gasoline's going to be it's a liquid. It's obviously a liquid, but then a natural gas, being that it's a gaseous fuel and it burns faster than gasoline does, you are going to have power loss there. So if you have a 5,500 watt generator, for example, you're probably going to get like a 4,200 watts out of it on natural gas. The other thing to consider too is how many BTUs per hour that you're going to need based on the size of your generator, how far away is the generator from your meter, and the further away, the larger the hose needs to be. Like you can't run a 50-foot half-inch hose from your gas, spigot wherever you have it installed and run it to the generator, because you might be able to get it started, but it will not be able to run it. It won't be able to keep up, can't run at full load because it's not pressure that's the problem, it's volume. So you need the flow. You need a big 3/4 inch to even a 1-inch hose, and that's big bucks. So the closer you have it to the meter, you can save on costs there. You upside either way. I mean, it all depends on how your house is set up. It is definitely worth doing, but you have to be careful on when you set the load block, because it's the opposite with gasoline. So gasoline, if it's running lean, if it's hunting and surging, it's not enough fuel going in there, it starts to hunt and surge. Well, you get higher combustion temperatures if it's running lean. It's the opposite with natural gas and propane. The richer the air fuel mixture is on natural gas, the hotter it's going to get, and that's where you can burn up the valve. So leaner is better when it comes to natural gas. So when you convert it up, so US Carb is the company that I've really spent a lot of years with. So there's other companies that have done similar conversions, but I've always found that the US Carbs with the KN regulator, demand regulator on the side with the load block adjustment gives you more fine-tuned adjustment based on the machine that you're using, because it's an aftermarket conversion.
All right, I got to grab a quick glass of water because I'm getting a little parched here. You guys can answer this one because it's going to take you a few minutes.
All right, James.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, all right. So what is I guess my biggest challenge thus far in all the equipment? So the question is the hardest or most difficult. So, I think it's really anytime you try something you haven't done before, it's challenging. The Yamaha TTR 125 for me was a challenge because that engine was just completely destroyed, and I hadn't worked on one like that before. So it was a learning experience, both in the fact that it was an expensive repair, but there was also a lot to learn quickly and to get it back together into a running machine. So I think that one was probably the most stressful. I actually like taking apart the engines that are blown up that have no possibility of being fixed, because you don't have to worry about breaking something while taking it apart, or losing a part, or keeping track of where all the parts go. It's just kind of relaxing to take an engine apart, knowing that you don't have to put it back together. But when you have something, especially old, that you know you can't buy or replace, and you're taking it apart, it becomes more difficult or more stressful, because you don't want to break anything, because you may not be able to replace it.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the biggest challenge for me was it's really just rust. Like this. I've worked on some 1970s snowblowers and trying to get the impeller off. I don't have an oxyacetylene torch. I just have a MAP gas tank uh, and a torch for that, just to get a little bit hotter than propane. And it's just that's really where I kind of struggle on some of them. Like I had an old 75 Aaron's snowblower. I think it was like a 26 or a 28. And I had to rebuild the gearbox. I had to change out the impeller bearing, and I was just fighting it tooth and nail. And I finally just gave up and said, "Look, the hub adapter that is," and I know like Terrell Fixes All has done this. And if you have the oxyacetylene, you just heat it up cherry red, quench it with water, and it pops off. Well, if you don't have that, you spend the 3 days of letting it sit on PB Blaster and all that stuff. So that's been the biggest challenge for me. I really haven't on some of the electronic projects. Sure, not really too big of a challenge, because it's just a matter of if I blow something up, then I can just rebuild it and try again. I just don't like to film it but I do make mistakes. But so yeah. What we got here, Captain Bubba?
Yeah. So rewinding.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't done it for a couple of reasons. I guess first off, I don't have any experience. I don't have any winding patterns. I don't have any time.
Yeah, that's
I think time is the big thing. I mean, rewinding a rotor is relatively easy if you have the time to sit there and do it. A stator is more involved. You do need some equipment, which I don't have. Nothing ridiculous, but you do need to take your time. And I also see, I get a lot of emails about people that have paid $1,000 to have their machine rewound, and then it doesn't work,
right.
or it doesn't work right. So maybe they rewound it a little bit wrong, or used slightly the wrong gauge wire. I mean, you could spend a lot of time rewinding something and then fire it up, and it's just not what you thought it was going to be. And then what? You pull it all out and start over. So it's something I'd like to do someday, but I think I'm going to have to be a full-time YouTuber or retired before I get the time to even try.
Yep.
I don't know why they're addictive. I don't know why anyone watches, honestly.
You speak like how everyone else is doing the DIY, and I've always admired that about you, James, just because you speak so slowly and clearly and calmly, because most of us would be looking at these kinds of problems and be like, what the hell just happened? You just take such a systematic approach, step by step. Well, let's try this. Anyways, let's go here. And looks like we're good to go. I think we're going to bring it out for testing. I mean, it's like listening to the radio show in the morning, right? Like if you're driving to work, and it's just, you could have a cup of coffee or two just listening to those videos. You don't even have to see what you're doing. It's just
it's like books on tape. Yeah,
exactly. You could be a very good audiobook narrator.
My videos are mostly done in anger. It's like, look at this piece of crap.
Honestly, that says a lot about your diagnostic ability and to be able to articulate it. So that's where a lot of people connect with your videos, and that's a gift.
Well, that's the key is the approach and how you get to where the problem is. And that's something too. A lot of times I'm pretty sure I know exactly where the problem is, but I don't want to shortcut it, because if you don't know where the problem is, you need to check certain things to get to that answer.
Yep. Do I start a political war on this one? Because I can discuss this a bit. There is, so in that generator, there's really nothing wrong with the generator. It was one of the earlier generators that Furman came out that had the CO sensor in there, and also it's called the VFO. And
you and I had nightmares about that one. Yeah.
What was happening was early on, and don't be afraid to buy the refurbished ones, because there was an early release of what this VFO board. It's called it stands for variable frequency oscillator. All it basically means is that it's monitoring the engine speed. If it goes outside of a certain range of engine speed, it's going to kill the ignition.
And wasn't that bandwidth real tight in the
Well,
beginning?
because we're dealing with high total harmonic distortion. You got other frequencies other than the 60 hertz coming in. Well, all they did was add a resistor and a capacitor to its input to basically act as a way to get rid of that noise, so that sensor could actually read the 60 hertz speed correctly and not see all the other harmonics that was causing it to be confusing and shutting itself down nuisancely. So a lot of people had problems with that. So and it's not a very expensive part. It was like a $15 or $20 part. It's very inexpensive, but it was causing a lot of problems because it's interconnected with all the other boards. Once they put a new revision out, they had a lot of they didn't have those problems anymore. But they had all these generators that got returned, and they didn't know what to do with them. So, and to kind of get the bad debt off their books, I would think, and I'm only assuming this, so please don't kill me. I've seen it enough times on the forums to know. I think believe that's the reason why.
All right, you guys, do you want to call 11 as the cutoff? I just don't want to keep you guys up all night.
I got about maybe another 10, maybe.
Okay, all right. So between that and 11. Okay, either way. Okay, like I said, guys that are out there, 11 Eastern time will be the official cutoff. So just
my wife is probably just taking a quick nap now.
Okay, all right. I know Jim's got to get the train in the morning. So
yep.
All right, let's see what else we got here. Here we go. Very strange to see James's face. I had a lot of those comments. A lot of people were texting me saying, "What's he look like? We're gonna see what he looks like." That was hilarious. Let's see. Any questions on your channel, Gary? Anything you want to say?
Yeah, I think it hasn't come through yet.
What's Pat saying? Will they come out with a battery powered generator?
Solar generator.
Right.
Oh,
they have them already.
Those are still a joke. It's like the electric car. It's all a joke.
Well, it would be like perpetual motion or something. Yeah.
No, that doesn't exist. Engineering. There was one that came across, but I think it's come through. Oh, we're still way behind on a lot of these. Wow.
Solar power, battery generator repair.
Yeah, it's
solar powered battery generator repair.
Like a Jackery or one of those.
Yeah, it's like one of those big portable power stations that has the ability.
Oh. Yeah, I don't think I would. Gary, I don't know if you would, but you're the one most qualified here.
I would probably, if a company were to allow me to, if send me a broken one, I can take a look at it. But if it's potted, then I doubt that any of those companies are going to provide schematics. See, the thing with those units, that you're going to spend quite a bit of money because they have lithium-ion batteries in them. They got a limited shelf life of 3 to 5 years, or service life. What usually breaks on them is the inverter first, if it's overloaded, and the batteries usually wear out. And when they start to lose capacity, if you're trying to draw too much of them, it brings the voltage down, which means the amperage goes up and the transistors blow. To me, I think that those are a waste of money. I don't see it's clean, but it really isn't that clean when it comes to how they're manufactured. So I think they're garbage.
Yeah. It's nice to have an all-in-one unit, but to your point, if one thing inside it breaks, then the whole thing's kind of garbage. You'd be better off having a separate battery bank, a separate inverter, a separate charger, charge controller. That way you can replace the parts as you upgrade or over the years, or if one breaks, if the inverter breaks, you don't throw away the batteries. Like that makes no sense.
Exactly. Raphael, I think I talked to you on the Facebook groups on this. Somebody, this sounds so familiar. The inverter board, so it's not controlling step motor on the carburetor.
Well, what do you mean it doesn't have a governor?
Yes, some of the inverter generators don't have a governor at all. It's all controlled by the stepper motor. There's no mechanical governor on the bigger engine. On the bigger machines, they have what's called an electronically assisted mechanical governor. So the mechanical governor will keep it within 5% of the set speed.
Yeah.
But the mechanical the stepper motor will make minute adjustments to keep that tolerance even tighter, to keep it at that 60 hertz. And that it's a little bit more complex as far as the linkage, but essentially the same thing applies. The inverter's reading the engine speed either from a sensor or reading it off the ignition coils. And what winds up happening is that if that particular circuit in the inverter board fails, well, that stepper motor is not moving.
Yeah.
It's gonna race at full speed, or it may not even get up to from low speed.
But
Uh,
isn't that what he says here is a little bit of a misnomer? He said it doesn't have a governor. Well, it does. It's the stepper motor acting as a governor,
Correct,
right? Yeah,
exactly. And
Mhm.
it's actually it's actually a more
it's probably more
system.
accurate and
It's a
quicker
more accurate
response.
system, but the problem is that even if if the machine is putting out power, but if it's not controlling the
Yeah.
stepper motor, you have no other choice. It's kind of, you have
Yeah.
to
Well, it's
buy a
like the
whole new
kids with a
inverter.
mini bike. All of a sudden it bogs down. You pull the throttle a little harder.
Yep, that's it. But he's probably going to have to get another inverter unit. That's likely what the problem is. Or you could try the $15. I think that's where I got the part number for you. Get the stepper motor and see if it's a bad stepper motor. Sometimes that happens. Or it could be a bad Molex connector.
Test the wires.
Test
Yeah.
the wires. Test the resistance of there should be should be 4 windings for a stepper motor. Typically, it's usually a 4 or 6 wire. But try to test it out and see if you have the ohms should be anywhere from the 10 to 20 ohms per winding, somewhere in that range. It's hard to say without getting us not even a schematic, but you need to know the design specs. But just to give you an idea, if it's open circuit or if it's shorted out, that's a good way to check it. But for $15, swap it out, see if it works. If not, you got to get a new inverter board.
Now Doug wants to cheat here, and Nick after us hasn't, but you guys can answer it, and then I'll put up Nick's answer.
That you could use as a non-inverter generator. An external AC, so AC voltage going in to DC to AC. Well, that's just, yeah. I mean, it on a non-inverter generator.
Yeah,
Well,
look what Doug says. You're basically why. And-
it's so impractical. Like, so
yeah,
if
yeah,
you really wanted to do it, so taking a conventional straight inverter, a non-inverter generator, if you wanted to use a battery bank, so what you can do is, instead of running it at a 12 volts to 120 volts, say, find one that's a 24 volt or a 48 volt uh, DC input to the inverter than 120 volt or 240, whatever you need, because you have less amps. And then what you can go and get are battery chargers or multi-stage power supplies. And a company called IOTA Engineering, I have one, DLS 90, which is basically takes 120 volts at 30 amps maximum and converts it over to 12 volts to charge the battery bank that I have that will power my house during an outage. Small stuff like lights. But the good thing about that is it's got what's called a passive power factor correction circuit. It's just a very large capacitor and very large inductor. It don't care what kind of total harmonic distortion you have. It'll run that all day and it won't complain. There's been thousands of those units, and a lot of people use those in that exact application. But that charger is like $300 just for one of them. And you need a significant capacity in order to run
Right.
it.
Yeah. Now, K-Paul's asking if you have a standard oil boiler and an older generator. Yeah, an older, like I have a Weil McLean oil-fired burner with a standard Honeywell Aquastat and a circulator and a couple of zone valves. It doesn't take a lot of electricity, and
No.
it doesn't care about harmonic distortion in that case. It's not electronically controlled and anything really.
It's the
So,
thermostat control boards, the new ones that run the Wi-Fi capable thermostats.
mhm,
A lot of the older ones are just all relays, capacitors, and
yeah,
resistors.
that's all mine is.
It's electromechanical, but
Yeah.
now you have the Wi-Fi
Yeah.
thermostats that actually have a microcontroller on there, and that
Okay.
microcontroller is where it's not. They didn't.
Yeah.
There's no need to filter those HVAC control
Yeah.
boards for high THD, because that's not what NEC.
So he can have an old system, but
Yeah.
if he's got a brand new high tech thermostat, you may want to watch it.
Yeah, he may want to watch it. So if he's got the old style 2-wire, zone, he
Yeah.
should be fine. I mean, it's a step up from the old Mercury switches, basically. But if you have a Wi-Fi thermostat or something like that, be very, very cautious.
Dave, I think he's asking what's the difference between an inverter and a non-inverter, maybe?
So the internals of a generator that have low. Oh, so he's talking about a conventional generator, a straight driven prime mover, not an inverter generator. It's the pitch of how far the laminations are, and then how they're usually not straight. They're usually slightly off. They're like a corkscrew, like the inside of a gun, and they do that for propagation. but most of the time it's usually pitch and the size of the wire, and it has to be pure copper, not copper-clad aluminum.
Yeah. It's also the engine and just how smooth it runs. Is it a single cylinder,
Yeah.
2-stroke, 4-stroke, multi-cylinder? Because you could take a generator that is clean, and if you're not running the engine smooth, it's going to create also some cavitations and mess up the THD as well.
A lot of times, if you find a single cylinder, a good, like the North Star generators, they have if they have a single cylinder, but they have low, like no more than 5% THD, they have an amortisseur winding, which is basically a shorted squirrel cage winding that, because when the piston's coming up, you're having a power stroke every 4 strokes, and then all the other 3 strokes of that piston is the machine's actually slowing down, so you're only getting that 1 power stroke. So what they do is, to smooth out the oscillations of the speed, they have that shorted winding to basically keep the engine speed as consistent as possible on some of those non-inverter types. Can we get a pure sine wave by adding an external circuit to a conventional generator? No. Other than what we had discussed before about using a AC to DC multi-stage power supply to power DC to AC inverter, you can get it. You can get a pure sine wave out of an external inverter unit, but big bucks. The inverter generators are just so much cheaper these days. It's just not practical.
Yeah,
it's not.
Here's a non-generator question. I'll take this one real quick. What's the best way to rebuild a pressure washer pump? In most cases, just buy a pump. No, I mean the last 3 pumps I've replaced were under $100. So I mean the rebuild kit was $79. So I'm buying a new pump. I'll be honest too. When you say why does it need to be rebuilt? I mean, what's actually wrong? 90% of the time, it's a clogged. What is it? The dump valve. It's just a clogged valve or something like that. So, but like I said, in most cases, look at the pump number. They're generally 1 or 2 different brands, and you'll see them on Amazon for $69 to $110. Just replace the pump in most cases. Or is it even worth it? To be honest with you, what's the engine like? What conditions it in? That kind of thing. Let's see what else we got. Let's see. A couple of people have said this, where James is the Bob Ross of small engines.
Yeah, that's a good way to describe
it. It actually
that's
is.
A compliment. That's a compliment.
Yeah, I've had a lot of comparisons to Bob.
Here's a good one, Jim.
Okay.
Hey, he's showing his face here today for 2 hours.
What's the reason for trying not showing your face in the videos? I watch all the videos. There's a few reasons for it. I mean, I think initially I didn't necessarily want my employer to know that I had this side gig. You had to have outside business approved, and it was
but
not
what
approved.
you do has nothing to do with small engine repair.
No, it doesn't, but it's still supposed to be approved activities.
Really? No matter what it is?
My primary job. Yes, absolutely.
Really?
So that was part of it. I didn't want to advertise that I was doing that.
That went to shit, Jim. Now you're like world famous.
I know. Well, I know. People started figuring it out. So, yeah, I got legit. I think the other part of it is, too, my microphone is literally on this camera, and it's a directional microphone, and it's terrible if I'm a foot or 2 away.
Yeah, you record with your phone, right? Basically.
I do, yeah. So a lot of times I'll hold the phone, have the microphone within about a foot, and it comes through nice and clear. If I actually walk away from it, if I set it up on a tripod and stood 10 feet away, you wouldn't hear anything.
So many people ask me, Jim, about your videos. Why does he overdub? Why doesn't he show the video? I said, he doesn't overdub. That's the video.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everyone thinks you overdub because of the way your voice is and how consistent it is throughout the video. They think you video first and audio after.
Nope. Very rarely. A lot of times in post-production, if I find a problem, like, oops, the audio, I had the gain set to 0 or something with this, there's no audio, the audio is unusable. Sometimes I'll salvage it, but it's usually done while recording live.
We're catching up on time here, so I know we got about 10 minutes left here.
Spark plug fires each time. Then I mean, you have wasted spark systems, all kinds of stuff.
Spark,
And Hester even said wasted spark. Yeah. Let's see. Who else we got here? Oh, another Australia here. Welcome, David. Hold on.
There.
Getting toward the end. Oh, champion question. Hold on.
That's the open frame inverter generator.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, I mean, if you want, listen, if you're on a budget, I think that they're decent. I mean, how often are you going to use it? I mean, if it's something that you're going to use like once a week,
Yeah.
maybe want to go for the Honda and buy once, cry once. But if you're going to use the Champion once or twice a year, I think you'll be just fine.
We're back to Amy again. Leave it in, Amy. Don't touch it. If it's running fine, don't touch it. The plug that was stuck. Yeah. All right. Getting toward the end here. Bloodbath. Do you use a choke on propane? I don't think you have to. Do you?
Nope. You use a prime.
No.
You use a priming bulb.
Yeah.
It's usually on the back of.
Yeah, like when you're like a pilot light almost, right? Where you're pushing.
So yeah, it's basically a pilot light, but you push the button. It actually bypasses the lock-off valve in your demand regulator to basically purge the air out of the line to the carburetor or the into the injector assembly, essentially. And that's how you prime the system to start it up on propane or natural gas.
Yeah. Sometimes too, depending upon how sensitive the lock-off valve is, like if you pull it over, it may not trigger the lock-off valve. So if you choke it, it might lower the vacuum a little bit more to trigger that lock-off valve to get a little flow of gas. But if you use the prime, then you don't need to worry about any of that other than maybe flooding it. It's easy to flood.
Yeah, 1 to 2 seconds, 3 seconds, no more than that.
Yeah. Here's a good question. If he has a diesel generator mounted on a trailer, what happens if he has to weld the trailer? Does he get short anything out?
That's a bonding question based on your local municipality. So we cannot comment and say.
No. But I'm saying if he has a little diesel generator just on a portable trailer, garden trailer, whatever, and he wants to do some welding repairs on it, right?
Yep.
I mean, I know a lot of times with cars, they say disconnect the battery when you're going to weld. Yeah. Should you disconnect anything on a generator if you're going to weld?
The odds, I'm not going to say nothing bad will happen, but I mean, the power is flowing between wherever the grounding rod is on the welder and the thing you're welding. Yep. And unless you're welding it right through the generator, chances are you're not sending power through it anyway. And I don't think there's a big risk there.
It's the low voltage control circuits that you got to worry about, because those spikes can punch through little surface mount devices or transistors, capacitors. If it's, if you're too close to them, I would think. But yeah.
Military surplus. I like military surplus.
Yeah, if you know how to work on them, go for it. They're built extremely well. They're meant to last.
And usually there's no hours on them if they've used it all,
Yep.
Vanguard. Let's see.
Open frame, Vanguard.
13,000. Wow.
That's got to be 13,000 peak watts, not running watts. No way that's 13. It's probably more like a 7 or 8,000 watt.
Yeah, that's 8,000 watts at 15 horsepower.
But like any generator sale, there's been no power failures lately. There's no snowstorms. There's no hurricanes. The best price you get for it is the day after a storm.
Exactly. And right now, if you let's put it this way, a 7,000 watt Briggs, or we'll say storm responder, we'll say a Generac, or anything that's been used, but if it's been taken care of, they're not selling at $250. Let's put it that way. So they're pretty much worth dirt until after an outage.
Yeah.
That's, at least over here in this part of the world.
Yep.
I saw a storm responder today, $100.
Yep.
Good condition. Nothing wrong with it.
Yep.
Furman.
Am I using once a year for running the Vidge? Yes, I think that's a great option. Don't keep the fuel in it. It's find the dual fuels. It's better to have like a 30, either a barbecue grill 20-pound or a 30-pound or even a 40-pound that you can keep somewhere that you can roll the generator to and hook it up to your house. Propane stores almost indefinitely. You can't get it to run dirty enough where you're gonna be able to go longer for oil changes, because it's not getting past the rings and contaminating the crankcase oil like gasoline would. It's just a much better fuel. But yeah, I would say if it's going to be used occasionally, no problem at all.
What's Brett asking here? Male?
I'm not sure.
Capacity and the weight. So he wants to know how many ounces for an EU 2000 and the weight. Owner's manual. I don't know off the top of my
What
head.
is male capacity? What or male capacity? What is that? What is he saying?
Maybe he meant to say oil capacity. I don't know.
Oh, okay.
Oil
'cause I'm saying-
capacity is about 340 milliliters.
Yeah,
In
it's
case
not
you're
much.
wondering.
Yeah, it's definitely not much. Oh yeah, oil capacity. You said okay. Yeah.
Yep.
All right.
It's not much.
No, it's not much.
Who else? Generac, real quick, and then we're gonna end it.
I'd run it every couple of weeks.
Well, what fuel are you using? Are you using
That's
ethanol
gasoline.
fuel? I mean, what do you
Gasoline
use?
only. GP 3250 needs to be run every other week and run it for 10 minutes. Even put a small load on or a light bulb. If you leave it in
Really?
there, it's sitting. I don't trust any of this ethanol fuel. It starts going bad. Why do you want to invite Murphy's Law? I would run it every other week for 10 minutes just to make sure.
See, I run mine twice a year. I keep ethanol fuel in it. Carburetor dry, but the tank full. No problem. Yeah.
Down east, check out the video that I did. Now the gentleman that I sold that actually was his generator. He wanted converted. That has the velocity choke and everything like that. They're decent. It's got high THD, so you got to be careful of what you're going to be powering it with. It's an okay generator. It's got a Honda engine on it. I would say that the power heads, run of the mill, nothing special, but it depends on your budget. If you got the budget for an inverter, get it.
Gary, where do you find wiring diagrams?
From if you can find them, and if they're legible, usually Parch Tree, Jack Small Engines. Sometimes if that's for the name brands, right? And if any of the Chinese ones, you're on your own. But if not, you just call directly to the. You can call up Briggs. You can call or email Briggs or Generac or Furman or any of those guys. You can find them, but most people won't dig that deep.
Mike, you can find you could find the kits on that. Briggs has the kits. Are not that cheap. There's a couple of different ones with the plastic arm. There's all different ones, but you got to look at your oil, the way your thing is set up. You're going to have to do some machining, things like that. So not the easiest thing to do, to be honest. And I'll be honest with you. Whenever I run anything, I check it every time. I always check it before you start it. But what are you actually powering with that? Because an early 7-horse L head, I mean, it doesn't have a lot of oil in it to begin with, usually about 19 ounces.
They're not meant to be run for very long. You have to go through a heat cycle. That's why a lot of the generators are pretty much now are all overhead. And even if they're splash lubrication, they only recommend running them up to say 7 or 8 hours. And then you got to let them sit for 2 hours and do a cool off cycle.
Yeah. How many generators have you worked on where the guy ran it for 80 hours straight and now everything's melted?
Can't even tell you how much. I don't post all those videos, but it's why bother?
Oh yeah, I had one guy at work. He said I literally ran it for 5 days straight. I never shut it off, and I was like, never. And he goes, no. I go, does it run now? He goes, yeah. But I took a quick look at it, and it looked like it was roached. Let's see.
Yeah, I think we're getting close to the end here, guys. We're going to probably have to follow here.
Battery packs to run everything. Power gen. That would be.
Yeah, definitely, guys. Hit the like button. Check out our channels. We have our emails. We'll be looking at these. We'll be looking at the comments to make sure that we don't miss you guys. So if we didn't get a chance to answer your questions, we apologize. But we definitely will plan another one of these lives very soon.
Oh yeah. But yeah, hit the like, subscribe if you can, please. Thank you. Appreciate it. It doesn't cost you anything. We'll try and do these things every month or 2 or 3 or whatever. We all have busy schedules. This is a good time of year because it's winter and a lot of people aren't doing a lot of stuff. But appreciate Gary, appreciate James, everybody out there. We thank you so much for coming. We're coming up on the 2-hour mark, so we're going to end it. If we didn't answer, like Gary said, leave it in the comments. We've got a few more days. We'll look at some questions. Go to Gary's channel, go to James's channel, go to my channel, leave comments, questions, answers, suggestions, whatever. We'll get to you. Eventually we'll get to you. And I'll look at questions too, and I'll send them to Gary and to James like I do because we chat all the time. And hopefully we'll get you an answer. But again, thanks everybody. Thanks to Gary. Thanks to James. And we'll talk to you guys soon.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Take care.